So good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy you're here today, keeping connected with the policy work of BHI. And just a reminder, I do tend to record the meetings and then be able to put those links out for those who will join us at another time in their own schedule. I will check with all of the presenters today to ensure that they're okay with that, but my intention is to go ahead and record. And then I usually put that out in the digest. Since it is Friday and the digest just came to you hot off the presses about 30 minutes ago, this would be something that you'll see in next week's Friday digest. Let's go ahead and get started with our land acknowledgement. We would like to open this convening by recognizing that we are on the unceded ancestral land of the Coast Salish peoples, the traditional home of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We cannot work to fulfill our mission and our vision of an anti-racist present if we don't first acknowledge and recognize the true history and the cost of colonization. However, acknowledgement is only a very first step, and we urge you to engage in accountable relationships and informed actions. Just a couple of quick announcements. Please do be sure to send me any updates and info for our policy digests that are good for the whole. Those come out on Friday. I tend to be working those Thursday. So if you could get those to me Thursday by noon, I'm always happy to add something in. I do look to all of you to stay informed to all of that news that is pertinent to our shared priority to increase, maintain, and sustain Black homeownership. A second quick announcement here, HDC's Affordable Housing Week is coming up soon. This incredible week-long series of education and advocacy events is taking place May 18 through 22nd, and it will highlight the role that affordable housing plays in our communities. And it would be so great to have many homeownership events this year. So if you have a great project to show off, consider a building tour. People love those tours. And if you want a low lift event, consider a webinar. Spread the word about the great work that you're doing. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll put in a link here in the chat about how you can sign up to host an event. That would be by May 1 that you would want to go ahead and make sure that you've submitted your idea and have that information ready to go. And then you can also learn about the events in the calendar and register to attend with that link there. So there'll be a kickoff, there'll be a closing. I am planning to host a BHI Network Policy Group happy hour. So I hope that you will all be able to consider joining in on that if you happen to miss the one last year. So in our time together today, we'll start with an icebreaker. And I know that we're all eager to move into our policy discussion, but we'll take a few minutes just to hear from one another. Spring has indeed sprung. This season of renewal and growth gives us an opportunity to rejuvenate our commitment to ourselves and to others. And we'll ask for people to share how they can rejuvenate their commitment to the policy work of BHI. And I hope that many of you will chime in. After that sharing, we're going to hear an update on the City of Seattle Partnership for Accessory Dwelling Unit Pilot Program from Rico Kirandango of the Seattle Office of Planning and Community Development. We'll then inaugurate our new Meet the Leaders series with a visit from City of Seattle's Council President, Joy Hollingsworth. This new series, Meet the Leader, this is going to bring policy leaders into the room to introduce themselves and to express their perspectives on our shared priority. And then we'll hear from Marisa Chavez, the new policy director at King County, about homeownership at King County under the new King County executive, Zahalai. And lastly, Jesse Simpson will provide us with an update on the Seattle Comprehensive Plan, and we can learn how we can lean in during this next phase of that work. And as always, we're going to end our meeting with a few minutes of open floor time to hear important news from you. So feel free to use that space to share news that is for the good of the whole. And with that, we're going to spend a few minutes here getting into our icebreaker. So spring can bring a feeling of joy and hope as we look forward to those longer days and that much needed sun. But it can also be a time of decision making. And we start to determine kind of how we want to use some of that new energy that we're feeling in our bodies. And so I am interested to hear from some of you about how this season of renewal and growth might be prompting you to rejuvenate your commitment to the policy work of BHI and why. What do you want to do to show up for policy change this spring? And, I'll share, I'm finding myself taking stock of where we are here after the session and feeling a need for input. So, we try to ensure that this time that you invest in these meetings is valuable for you. Often this means providing you with information, but you are the policy work at BHI, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from you. So I would like to rejuvenate my commitment to connection and voice in our policy work, and that is why during our May meeting, we are likely to spend some time in interactive activities that can provide opportunities for you to provide direct input. So I'm going to go ahead and open the floor here. Who else would like to share how they might want to rejuvenate their commitment to the policy work of BHI? I see a hand up there.
You talking to me?
Is that you, Ms. Ruby?
Yes,
Welcome.
it is. I've always said that the mission of my business, Keeper Habitat, is as we save our homes, we will remember the little guys, the pollinators and the birds who are also losing habitat to too much development, and we will help them by planting flowers that attract them. Well, we haven't gotten there yet, but spring is here, and we at Central Area Neighborhood District Council are really feeling the need to try to create a pollinator habitat throughout the CD, just to, bring some hope, joy to our people. Let the people at City Hall know that we want a sustainable, livable community despite all of the construction that's going on.
I absolutely love that, Ms. Ruby. I am a gardener myself. I have a rooftop farm on my building, and I am part of the pollinator pathway, and I would love to
Oh,
chat with you more.
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, doing lots of seeding this weekend. So super happy about that. And I love how that connects everything together that we're talking about here. Who else would like to share? How might you feel like you want to kind of rejuvenate that commitment to the policy work of BHI? I see in the
Betty, I don't
chat.
mind going.
Okay, please do.
I'm glad to be here. This is my first BHI meeting. My name is Larry Gilmore. I own a company called Clear Blue Capital Group, where we do lending across the country, focused on supporting early to mid-stage developers and with an emphasis on communities of color. And then I also focus on development here locally. But really for me, I'm really focused on increasing my network, being intentional as relates to my network. And I think in this environment we're in today, there's a lot of new activities from a policy perspective, and not a lot of new opportunities locally. And so getting up to speed with these activities and allowing myself to share that information with existing or future homeowners is important. As what was just stated, the retention of homeownership is important. But I think over the last 10 years, a lot of focus has been on affordable housing on the rental side, but we can't lose sight of the ball as it relates to communities of color and the impact of homeownership as it relates to developing wealth. But I'm glad to be here.
Well, thank you for speaking, Larry, and welcome to the BHI Network Policy Group. You are certainly in the right space with that perspective. That is what we are here to do. So excited to have you here. I do see something in the chat here, just talking about, history renews, so committing to address present injustices also means learning about past injustices. And so Sophie is sharing that they have a light rail commute now, and so they can send any books their way that they may want to be looking at. So sounds like a commitment to kind of rejuvenating personal education, which always can lead to change. Is there anyone else in the room who might want to share? Just again, how do you want to rejuvenate your commitment to the policy work of BHI this spring? Great.
I'll go, Bambi. So, anyone who knows me knows I'm an uber extrovert. And now that right, Kathleen? Oh, my Lanta. Anyways, now that the session is over and all of our state representatives and senators who are up for reelection are kicking off their campaigns, I have filled almost every other day for the next 3 weeks with going to campaign kickoff parties. And how that circles back to BHI is to really help our elected officials understand that this is a comprehensive array of policies that need to be changed in order to elevate equity and improve homeownership rates for all Washingtonians, but especially those who have been historically left out. So that's my rejuvenation, a whole bunch of hanging out with libs and preaching truth to legislative needs.
I love that, Kim. And, the more each of us can be an ambassador to the work that we're doing, the more voices and perspectives we can bring into the work. And so absolutely love that you're focusing on that as a spring activity. If there's one last person who'd like to share, I think we have time for one more sharing. Again, how might you want to rejuvenate your commitment to the policy work of BHI?
Bambi, can I?
Well, Rico, I'm going to introduce you in a moment, but I
Okay,
think
all
I'm
right.
going to go with Ishmael, and then we'll let
Yeah.
you open with that if that works for you.
Sounds good.
Excellent. Ishmael?
Hi, this is Ishmael. I think for me, the rejuvenation commitment would be to stay on top of the changes those are coming in and find innovative ways to create more ownership housing.
Absolutely. And I hope I can help you a little bit with the
Yes,
digest.
you are very well. For me, is I have a place to approach, and go to. So that's good for me to get information.
Absolutely.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. Well, thanks for sharing, everyone. And we are going to go ahead and move on and get an update from Rico here, City of Seattle Partnership for Accessory Dwelling Unit Development Pilot. We've had Rico here to visit with us in the past, and so we're looking forward to this update. We heard from him at the Policy Summit in December. And now he's going to have that opportunity to catch us up on what's been happening with the pilot over the last 4 months. And Rico, if you want to open that up by, letting us know how you're feeling about renewing your commitment. I mean, you're here, so that's a pretty good start. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here because if you happen to have anything you might want to share, I'm going to make sure you have the ability to do that.
So Nicholas is going to share some slides. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rico Kidding-Dongo. I'm the director of the Office of Planning and Community Development. So renewal for me, I had the good fortune of being able to be at the Black Legacy homeowners meeting at SVI yesterday, where Caleb was the featured subject matter expert speaker. And the sad for me reality is that I don't have the good fortune of, like, I can't focus on all the work that I want to do most of the time. And like being in community is actually the most important work. And I love that. Just being in community and talking through hard stuff and helping people like realize their dreams. I am recommitting to that in all the ways that I can. And just really excited to work with this group and others like Black Legacy homeowners, like Bird Bar Place, regarding this like deep need that we have as a community to like build more housing and build generational wealth. So Nick Welsh, who's on the line also and is going to be doing part of this presentation, he thoughtfully reminded me that whereas there's a number of these slides that some of you have seen before, that there would be new people in the room that had not seen this at all. So excited and also apologizing for folks that have seen some of these slides, apologize for going over them again. But wanted to give people an overview of the concept that we are pursuing at City of Seattle. 10 years ago with the last comprehensive plan, the city asked community, what should we be doing to help mitigate the negative impacts of a citywide upzone? And the Equitable Development Initiative was born out of that. That is a program that today, now provides $25 million, around $25 million a year to BIPOC-led organizations to do their own development work and own their own sites in communities so they can continue to provide the culturally specific social services that they know how to do best. With this comprehensive plan, major updates, including HB 1110 compliance, getting rid of single family zoning and allowing 4 units on every lot, 6 were adjacent to transit. I believe very strongly that we need to, what we did for EDI for commercial units 10 years ago, we need to do for missing middle housing and ADU, DADU development today. And so that's what this program is. How can City of Seattle enter into a public-private partnership with community and with not-for-profit developers to help Black Legacy homeowners realize the financial capacity of the property that they own, realize an opportunity to expand what's available on their site, their home site for their families, build generational wealth, create a second income opportunity. So we'll jump into it in this deck, and I assume you'll have some questions. Bambi, remind me how much time we have.
You are good till about 12:35.
Okay. Nick, do you want to jump in? Why don't you jump in?
Yeah, we have about 10 slides here, so we'll go quickly. We don't have a ton of time here, and a little bit of it is a refresher. But as Rico said, we're at this moment now in Seattle where we've updated our zoning to allow 4 or even 6 units everywhere on every lot. And that's a really exciting opportunity for more infill housing, for more rental choices, and it can help existing homeowners, but we know that a lot of homeowners can't actually take advantage of that possibility because of the barriers they face in the design and permitting process, financial barriers, or just the challenge of having to figure out how to take on a construction project. And to make this zoning work well, we believe that if we could support those homeowners to overcome those types of barriers, more lower and moderate income homeowners and homeowners of color, legacy homeowners, could create the housing that's allowed on their property and capture that benefit for themselves and their community. So we're exploring this idea that we're calling the Partnership for ADU Development, or PAD. And in the PAD model, the city would facilitate a partnership between homeowners and a trusted nonprofit partner who would co-develop 2 homes in their backyard. We'll go through the mechanics of it in a second, but this is a way to help homeowners overcome those barriers so that we can build infill housing in more areas of the city. We would create 2 rental units at 80% of AMI through each project, and homeowners would get multiple benefits. One is they would get monthly lease income because they would ground lease their backyard to the partner, and that would give them some ongoing stability. And after a period of time, they would take on full ownership of those added units without having to go into debt, without having to take on risk or figure out how to manage a construction project. At a high level, the way that works is the partner and the homeowner would work together to split the homeowner's lot. The homeowner retains ownership of both lots. The partner takes out a ground lease for the backyard, and working together, they design and permit, and then the partner builds and owns and operates 2 ADUs or 2 rental units in the backyard. They rent those every month. They collect rent and they give the homeowner a lease payment. It's theirs to use. Some of it is invested into paying off the debt. And then after 10 years, the permanent loan debt has diminished to a point that the homeowner can either pay it off or refinance the property. And with even just renting one of those units going forward, easily cover any ongoing debt service. They now own 3 units instead of 1. They've been able to achieve that vision to develop on their property, but without having to take out a lot of financing or take on a lot of risk or figure out how to overcome those barriers that they face. So to give an example a little bit of what this looks like, if we imagine 2 backyard units, 2 bedrooms each, 800 square feet, we're trying to conservatively estimate that that might be $500 a square foot. So the construction cost would be $800,000. In our model, we imagine that half of that is conventional construction debt, and half of it is something we're calling seed funding, which is any combination of public money, philanthropic money that helps to buy down the cost of construction. On the revenue side, every month, the partner takes in rental income from those 2 units. And with that income, they cover operating expenses. They make a ground lease to the homeowner. They cover the debt service on the construction loan. And there's some remaining cash flow that is reinvested into future PAD projects. So during the 10 years that the projects would be rented, that the units would be rented, the homeowner is collecting a lease payment. Half of it is invested by prepaying the loan. And so the homeowner, in a sense, is gaining equity in the project that way, and that's buying down the debt balance exponentially. So that at 10 years, they have a very manageable loan balance that remains. They can pay that off, or they can refinance that remaining loan balance. They buy out the partner, and they take full ownership of the homes. They've owned the land outright themselves the entire time. Now they have ownership of those 2 structures. If the homeowner rents just one of those units going forward, that easily would cover the remaining debt service on that refi loan, if that's the path they choose. But they have flexibility to use those units however they want, to keep renting them, to use them for family, however they wish. We think this is a valuable and important strategy at an important time. We've upzoned 3/4 of the residential area of Seattle, and we think this is a model for us to accomplish a bunch of goals. For the homeowner, it allows them to participate in the development of their community and find a way to achieve stability and stay in place without taking on risk and debt and having to become a project manager for a construction project. They retain ownership of all of their land. Something we've heard from a lot of homeowners is paramount when they're thinking about how to plan for the future. And at the end of this period, there is a a period of 10 years. Yes, they have to be patient, but then they come into owning an asset that provides generational wealth for their family. Thinking about the city and the public benefit that results from this investment, we have a new anti-displacement tool to help vulnerable homeowners stay in their communities. It helps catalyze middle housing production. It creates 2 workforce rental housing units in the backyard in areas of the city where rental housing is very scarce. And it helps stabilize homeowners and build capacity in community-based nonprofit development partners who can grow and scale and continue helping homeowners to realize their dreams. So to share a little bit more about the role of the partner, they would essentially carry out the project on the homeowner's behalf. So they would have a ground lease agreement with the homeowner. They would have an agreement with the city of Seattle and would receive funding from the public sector. And they would have a conventional construction loan agreement with a lender. And then they would hold all of the contracts for subconsultants, general contractor that build the project. So they're really the hub that is operating the project. We think the ideal partner has to have 2 things: experience developing small-scale infill housing and trust in the communities that we are trying to serve. If we have one and not the other, this model doesn't work. And we'll read all of this. We can share these slides with you all, but the purpose here is to show how what the partner actually does is guide the homeowner through each phase of the development project, starting with visioning, where they figure out what is that household's needs and vision and what project is right for them, going through the legal steps to appraise their site, deal with the existing mortgage that they likely have, carry out a lot split, create a ground lease, and then go through the phases of pre-development and development, designing, permitting, constructing the units. And then they take on the operations. They operate the units, collect rent, and share that rent in the form of a lease payment with the homeowner. That happens every month for 10 years until they hand off the units to the homeowner. We envision and are trying to launch this as a pilot. We know this is a new concept. There's no one that is doing exactly this model, so we believe we should prove that this concept can work through a pilot phase. And the pilot, we imagine, is working with 10 homeowners, building 2 units in each backyard, 20 units in total, over a 5-year period. And so right now, we're looking at ways to pursue public funding that would cover the operations of the partner and account for half of construction, as you saw in that graph. And then conventional, we're talking with lenders about conventional debt products that would be tailored to this model and would provide the other half of construction costs. And so going forward, we're now starting to talk to interested homeowners about how this model may work for their needs and actively pursuing some leads on getting funding, which we'll tell you about in a second. So to get this going, we need to form the partnership. We have several organizations we're engaging who are interested in playing a role. We imagine that we would start this in a pilot geography. We're thinking that might be the central area, Beacon Hill, Mount Baker, central and southeast Seattle, where there are lots of suitable sites, where historically things like ADUs have been relatively less common, less development of those types of infill housing. And so this is a way to accelerate production of infill housing. And we know that that's where there are a lot of legacy homeowners and communities that have homeowners vulnerable to displacement, whom this tool could help. We need to get seed funding, so we're exploring ways to do that. And then public benefit will be part of this too. So just to underscore that because we're proposing that public funds would go into launching this pilot, the public benefit, there would be multiple public benefits, one of which is that the rental units created in the backyard would have a rent limit of 80% of area median income. There's also the public benefit of just creating more housing production overall and the stabilization for vulnerable homeowners. So by way of an update, where we're at right now, for those of you that may have been hearing about this from us in the last several months, we are starting to talk to organizations that are interested in playing a partnership role and are pretty eager to try to formalize those relationships. We've started to get feedback from homeowners to understand what they're hoping to do with their property, what their needs are, what their particular situation is, and to think about how this model works for them or could be tailored and adapted to work for them. We actually applied with the Rainier Valley Community Development Fund, which is a CDFI that works in Southeast Seattle primarily, last month we applied to the Commerce CRP funding opportunity, requesting funding for essentially ADU financing resources, and that could go towards pad projects. And then in total, we're looking at a budget for that pilot phase of about 10 million in total, roughly half of which would come from public or philanthropic seed funding. And so that is our approach now, is to look for how we, with our partners, can pursue funding for that. So I know that's a quick flyover. We don't have a ton of time today. Rico and I are happy to, in our last 4 minutes, answer some questions or talk with you all offline to hear more questions or share more about this. Thanks for the time today.
So I saw a question in the chat about what about renters looking to become homeowners? This is something that has come up numerous times before and that we're interested in. There's a ton of complexity behind what will make the performers work for this for the pilot program. I think that as we build it out, we will also the baseline of the pilot may not have that component to it, but I have been interested in trying to figure out if there is a way for us to create a high yield long-term savings account component such that as renters that are a part of the program make monthly payments, their monthly rent payments, that a portion of it would go into that fund for them to use as a 20% down or maybe less than that to enter into home ownership. Like I said, it's totally just a concept right now and something that we haven't borne out in a pro forma, but certainly something that I'm interested in it as a concept. Do other folks have questions?
See a hand from Tiara.
Yeah, I love this idea. This question might be obvious, but I'm curious about how vacancy rates and maybe renters who are unable to pay will impact the project.
So there's it's actually a complicated question. I'm acknowledging. I'm just saying that to say I have a short version of an answer to it, but it will not. This answer is not going to cover all issues. So a couple things. One, our expectation is that as we enter into contract agreements with a homeowner to rent their backyard, that agreement being with this community partner, development partner, that also will mean a management agreement. Part of what that agreement will require on the risk side for the partner is that and I'm just making up the numbers right now, but that they will guarantee a monthly payment of $1,000 liquid cash to the homeowner, the property owner, every month for the 10-year duration, regardless of whether there's someone in that unit or not. And that's part of the risk profile that they're taking on. That means that they will be motivated to ensure that there is a renter in the unit. That does mean that they will need to have the ability to have some controls over ensuring that they can get someone into that unit in partnership with the homeowner. I don't know if that totally answers the question, but it's just a quick pass.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Bambi, if we can take maybe 1 minute, maybe we can hear from Miss Ruby and then Christopher.
Sounds good. Ms. Ruby,
Miss
if you want to
Ruby?
come off mute, we can't hear your question if you're speaking.
I don't have a question, but I want to
Oh.
say something very important because I've been running to a lot of arguments about this. And, you know, Rico assured me that this is not a Black program. It's not a program just for Black homeowners, it's for everybody. And the reason that's important is because the president is removing those programs that are any
Yeah,
program that's federally funded. And we want to
yeah,
make sure that this one is able to stay.
yeah. And that is 100% correct. The program, anything that we're putting into any contract language or any website language will never say that this is exclusively for uh, Black or brown families. It doesn't mean that I don't have the desire, interest, and intent of focusing on Black legacy homeowners, but it is not exclusive.
And it also comes from what we've heard from Black legacy homeowner communities, and is in trying to respond to that need. But again, I think there's strength. We think there is strength in having it be universal in nature and its applicability.
We have one more last question from Christopher, and then we're going to move forward to our next segment.
Hey, I love this idea. Good to see you, Rico. I love this idea. There's so much to appreciate about it. I am curious about one thing, and this may be a long answer, but putting a nonprofit to overseeing micro units. I'm not calling them little homes. I'm just saying a small portfolio like this. And it takes just as much work for a big building as it does for 2 units. Have you guys thought about how this scales for nonprofits to try to participate without it becoming?
So let me take the first stab at that. So short version, we know that there are, without going into naming of individuals or organizations, we see this as when we did the upzone HB 1110 compliance, what we essentially did was open up a new market opportunity, which will be attractive to a different kind of developer, small developers, nimble developers, investors and developers that are invested locally in community, not the typical Plymouth housing. I mean, like the all of the developers that we know that are a part of HTC. It's super important, and I have awesome relationships with all of them. So I'm not throwing shade to all of our light tech developers at all. But what we think this is a new body of partners that are interested in this smaller types of investments. I think you're absolutely right that the amount of work is the same, and the reason I'm saying that this group that's already catalyzed in community or interested in being catalyzed in community is important is I think it's a program that is really geared for people that really want to do this already and are just looking for greater resource.
Well, thank you all for those great questions, and thank you so much, Nick and Rico, for sharing with us today. We'll continue to get updates as this moves forward, and I will certainly be able to save and share with all of you the PowerPoint that you saw there so you can review it on your own time. So right now we're going to go ahead and move in and inaugurate our new Meet the Leaders series. And we welcome Council President and District 3 Council Member Joy Hollingsworth to the room. Council President Hollingsworth is a 4th-generation Seattleite, born and raised in this central district. She attended Seattle Public Schools while spending her summers at Garfield Community Center. She is the product of lifelong educators, civil rights leaders, and small business owners. And in November of 2023, she was elected to Seattle City Council representing District 3. She focuses on the fundamentals and bold basics for our neighborhoods. In January of 26, she was unanimously voted in as council president by her colleagues. And Madam President, I hope we can hear you and you can be heard. Let me know if you have any problem with that. And the floor is yours. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so you can be seen and we can see you.
Hi, thank you, Bambi. Thank you for that great introduction. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. It's really good to see all y'all. Thank you. I came in on the tail end, Director Rico, for that presentation. But looking forward to working with you on that and OPCD and all the great work that you all do as well. Super happy to be here. Like I said, I have. Am I supposed to just answer questions or just talk about a little bit of approach, what the city, what like we're doing, next steps, kind of that phase?
The floor is yours.
I
You're the
okay.
inaugural person, so you're kind of setting the tone here. We just love
Okay.
to have you introduce yourself and then just, it'd be great to hear
Awesome.
your
Okay.
perspective on our shared priority here.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Well, anything black is always shared. Okay. So let me just start with that. So, um, I know you said a great introduction, a little bit about myself around the housing piece, because I think that's why we're all here, which is really important. I'm lucky, and I've said this often, that I live in the house my grandma bought in 1947. And the way we were able to stay in this home was we converted the house back in 2001 into a triplex, stripped it down to the studs. And so there are every level. This used to be a 5 bedroom, 3 bathroom home. And now it's a stack flat basically. This was the house I was brought into when I was born in 1984, and the same house that my nephew, who was born in 2024, was brought into as well. So we're very lucky to have this opportunity and legacy, obviously in the Central District, but also a lot of my friends were not, unfortunately, did not have that opportunity. And so while being on council, there are things that we have incorporated and adopted. I know the one thing that I've heard a lot were three things. Number one, communities wanted to stabilize. So it was like, hey, we understand that we want to have more people to be able to afford home ownership, but there was a community were losing their homes more rapidly than we were adding them. So you had people that said, "Hey, we want our homes to be able to stabilize." That was the different things. That could be a conversion, like we did. That could be adding ADUs and DADUs, like you probably heard with the presentation from OPCD. Taxes, repairs on people's homes, or friends that had reverse mortgages after houses were passed down, did not know what probate was. They're just different things in which people were struggling with. So we heard, number one, Joy, we wanted to stabilize. The second thing was the new home ownership piece that we know with the Covenant program from the state, but identifying places in Seattle where people could afford housing was a challenge. But I know that program has been, I'll say, successful. I don't know. I know I've read the numbers and stuff, but for the most part, just trying to get that off the ground, and its implementation, has been the first in our state. So improving on that piece as well. And then the third piece I heard from a lot of people that said, "Hey, we have this property and we want to develop it," whether it was a church, a nonprofit, adding more different types of opportunities. So we heard those three things. I think as a council lens, we tried to, in the comprehensive plan, work with a community, OPCD, on different measures to be able to add more growth in our city, but also to hard conversations of protecting our Central District and Rainier Valley from more expanded, I know we call it displacement, I call it gentrification. So, ex figuring out different laws and policies in which we could help protect neighborhoods and also expand growth. I always say I would love Laurelhurst to look like 23rd and Union. And so figuring out different pathways through environmental impact studies and other policy choices where we could help continue growth in other places that might not had experience what we have seen in different neighborhoods in Seattle, particularly Central District, Rainier Valley, Rainier Beach, in those areas. So I will stop there because you all didn't come here to hear me talk. I'm more than happy to answer questions, talk about what we're looking at in phase 2 from our lens. Yeah.
Well, feel free to raise your hand if you have a question here for Councilmember President. And I do see a note here in the chat, and that would be from Ms. Ruby. Earlier, maybe before you joined us, they were talking about pollination gardens throughout the CD and the ability to integrate, the possibility of green space. So maybe I'll ask you that one, or Ms. Ruby, if you'd like to unmute and ask that yourself.
Hey, Miss Ruby, good to see you again.
Hey, I was just wondering if you heard my plea for CanDC to create a pollinator garden throughout the CD.
Yeah, yes, I heard your plea. We have that written down, so we're just trying to figure out, okay, what is the next steps for us to advocate for that. So yes, we heard your
Okay,
plea. Thank you,
thank
Ms. Ruby.
you.
And Francesca?
Hi, it's good to see you, Councilmember Hollingsworth.
You too.
I wanted to ask about the comprehensive plan, phase 2, because I think we've all taken a look at the upzoning maps, and a good portion of the Central District, especially around like Mount Zion, has neighborhood residential zoning zones that would be moved to mid-rise. Can you elaborate more on why there's such a jump, and what we could do possibly to get that down to LR2 or 3?
Hi, Francesca. Hey, thank you. It was actually you. I tell the story a lot about how when I was trying to steer the comprehensive plan in phase 1, where I was so focused on running a good process, I forgot about being a good council member and responding to the needs of our district. And when you came down to the meeting, you were the only Black person there, and it hit me really hard because you told the council members, do not erase me. And that's when I did my infamous donut hole amendment, right, to figure out the lines and boundaries of the Central District. And I got flack for that, but I didn't care because I knew that there were community groups that had talked about the boundaries of the Central District and how important that was, and figuring stuff out. So just a quick note that I have to circle back with Miss Ruby and other folks and you all to make sure that those boundaries are, figuring that piece out and protecting a Central District from like the regional center and different things. But I do want to say I'm more than happy to meet with you all. We have all the maps from the regional centers to the neighborhood centers, but all the height things that are being proposed in our office. So more than happy to connect with you just to talk about what you're specifically identifying in the neighborhoods to figure out how we can make those adjustments and propose those and see if there's appetite on the floor for those.
Okay, thank you. That means a lot. Thanks.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we have 2 more questions here, one in the chat and then one hand raised there. Ryan, I'm not sure who was first. I'm going to go with Michelle's.
That was asked first.
Yeah, so we have Michelle Lambert asking, how can we create affordable homeownership on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm not an expert. I know what people have told me was obviously expanding more housing opportunities to build with zoning, stack flats. We put a lot of stuff in our comprehensive plan for phase 1. I'd love to throw it back on the group to say, hey, what would be considered affordable home ownership? That's the first piece. Because I know what it looks like outside of Seattle in different states where I'm like, oh, for 200,000 I get a pool, but I'm in Detroit or Texas. Trying to like ask what would be affordable in Seattle, understanding that no one's gonna be able to buy a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom house for $5,000 like my grandma did in 1947, or in 1993 my parents bought their home in Rainier Beach for $110,000. But thinking about, okay, what does affordable home ownership look like? And then also too, what are some starter homes for young people as well? So I would throw it back to you to be like, hey, what would you consider affordable? And then go from there.
All right. Michelle, if you wanted to, unmute and respond, or
No,
if,
I
if you want us to
appreciate
move.
that, but yeah, that seems to be the dislink. My thoughts of affordability versus what's considered affordable, especially here in Capitol Hill, which happens to be one of the highest AMIs. But unfortunately, or fortunately, on both ends, catch 22. I love living here, but I'm a renter. But I've been here, and I live here, and I have a 3 bedroom. I have a secured building. I have secured parking, and I pay less than $2,000. My kids have been raised here. I don't want to leave this. I don't want to move to Auburn. I don't want to move to Kent. We don't know anybody. So just trying to figure out, and I do homeownership. So I myself am also trying to tackle like how do you keep families here? Because it seems like if you're just starting off and you're single, you could get a roommate and huff it out here a couple years. And but then when you get with somebody and you want to settle down and have a family, unless they're at least a minimum 6-figure earner, then you gotta go. You gotta go. So just I'm open to ideas. Just wanted to hear where your thoughts were. Yeah, I see you in the community. I love where I live. I'm right here on 15th. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I got volunteer, Cal. I can walk. I don't need a vehicle, but I have one. But I love my neighborhood and I want to stay here, right? But I don't want to be a renter forever. So how can I progress?
No, absolutely, and that's great context for me to understand. And I think what we had tried to do our best in phase one were a lot of zonings, up zones around schools, stack flats, bonuses as well. We can do all these up zones and LR this and whatever. But I think the reality is that if and I'm working on this with the city, if we don't help our and when everyone always talks about like permitting process and all those things, or I know MHA is very very what do you call it, spicy right now. There are adjustments that we're going to have to make at the city so we can hopefully like expand a lot of the building opportunities for people for home ownership pieces, and the covenant, and expanding the covenant down payment assistance. So you don't. So if you see something that might be kind of out of range, but that down payment assistance help to make it affordable. I think those opportunities are there, and then I'm open to other ideas, what you all want to see as well, and what we can kind of control as a city council, because we can only control so much with our policies that we're doing.
All right. Well, we are a little bit past time, but we have a couple people here who'd like to give some quick comments. Does that work for us? I hope our next presenter is in the space here. So we're going to just take a few minutes over time. I have Kathleen, and then Davida, were you planning to go ahead and?
Yeah, I still have a question if there's time.
Sure, you bet.
So did you want me
Go
first?
ahead, Kathleen.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Just wanted to make sure that you're aware that there are affordable homeownership developers working hard in Seattle to create those first-time homeownership opportunities. They're permanently affordable homeownership. We are doing a project in the Central District with Goodwill Missionary Baptist, which is a stack flat building, very similar to the two that we're doing in Finney Ridge, that we just finished construction on one, and we'll finish the other one here in 2 months. But those total of 55 homes, and the prices for those income qualified prices are $250 to low 300s. And then we are also producing market rate homes, which are in the $400,000 level. So we're driving affordability. Those are subsidized homes, but in the Cap Hill and Central District in particular, it's land availability, which is the biggest constraint. We do have support from the city in terms of development subsidy, so we can build new homes and we can price them within range. But that is an important part of the strategy for creating homeownership and those starter homes. That ours are 1s, 2s, and 3s. No reason we couldn't be doing 4s as well. at
What
some
is your
point. So
income? What is the income
it's
restraint?
below 80% of area median income is the requirement, but we target income 60 to 75% of AMI.
Yeah, understood. Thank
All
you.
right. And then we have one more comment here.
Yeah, that's me and Davita. Hi. I used to work at the Seattle Public Library, and when I did, we teamed up with OPCD, and there was a really interesting public benefits stat around what amount of public benefit dollars you have when you live in the city of Seattle versus when you have to live in outlying areas. Does OPCD have updated stats? Like what I remember was something like when you live within the confines of the city of Seattle, you have access to about 300 public benefit dollars. And then after that, it drops down as, I think it dropped down as low as like 6 when you were in outlying areas. So the sister who was saying, hey, I'd like to live where I'm living, that's actually a reality, especially for, I would say, Black people, other people of color. Those things are really real and important for us. So do you all have any insights there? Because those types of stats are really helpful.
Well, we do still have Nick from OPCD on the line, and we can have him go ahead and maybe do an offline answer. I'll be happy to connect him. So if you want to send me your quick email, I'll make sure that we can do that. Unless Councilmember Hollingsworth, you have something top of mind there.
No, I thank you for the question, Davita. I don't know if Rico is still on. But if you just send me a message, I can connect you with OPCD to try to. Okay, I see your emails in there. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, and
All right.
I'm still here.
Hey, Rico, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I mean, anything that I can do to help, I will. So I think email follow-up is good.
Perfect. And I will say, and again, I don't know everything at all. I'm always learning. But I will say in the context of like anything like Black home ownership and as we're talking about like stabilization or whatnot, I think it's very important to talk about the obviously the wealth disparities that's within Seattle. But particularly when we're doing these programs, and I pushed on the city on this, is that I don't believe there should be an income requirement for Black people to be able to get help regarding stabilization. I know oftentimes it's like 100% AMI, 80% AMI. There's a lot of people that are within a middle class in Seattle that are income restricted who do not qualify for a lot of these programs that we're pushing for or the city. And I just think it's just unacceptable that they're not able to get those based on the issues and the racism and the historical targeting of those communities. It shouldn't that for me, it's so I'm constantly going to push on that you shouldn't have to be a certain AMI in Seattle Black and not qualify for certain stuff. I just think that's just unacceptable. So anyways, I'll be pushing on that. I pushed on the city to do 100% AMI for certain programs, and I'm going to keep pushing on that because I feel like if you live in Seattle and you're Black, you should be able to qualify for whatever because we have only 4% of the overall wealth in the entire country, and that is ridiculous. So anyways, I'll just say that. Thank you.
I love that as last words from you, Madam President, and very much in line with kind of the work of the Covenant Homeownership Act trailer bill where we moved up to 120% AMI. Very similar logic there when we're talking about the lack of intergenerational wealth.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate all your time and your work. And I'll throw my email in the chat as well. I'm more than happy to meet and talk to folks and follow up if I didn't cover anything. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us today. Hey everyone, that was amazing. A great way to kick off a new Meet the Leaders series. And we actually have another leader in the room today. We look forward to continued work with Council President Hollingsworth. And we now welcome Marisa Chavez from the King County new policy director under the new King County Executive, Gurmai Zahalai. Marisa joined the executive's office from the Washington State House of Representatives, where she served as the policy director for the House Democratic Caucus. Over more than a decade, she led policy work spanning labor, housing, human services, higher education, and consumer protections, and she has led with consistent focus on public service and worked alongside communities of color to advance change. I had the privilege of meeting Marisa while working on the Covenant Homeownership Act, and she was an incredible partner in that work. We certainly couldn't have done it without her. And today, Marisa will give us a quick lay of the land of the homeownership work here at King County. And we'll continue to stay connected with her and look forward to future work together. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now. And welcome, Marisa.
Hi, Bambi. Thank you for that really lovely introduction. I am very excited to be here with you all today. I just wanted to say I might actually give you a couple of minutes back in your agenda because I don't have a lot prepared. I will say I thanks to the introduction of Bambi, I actually am new to Executive Zahalai's office and new to the county. I have spent the last almost decade at the state legislature where I was very fortunate to work on the initial Covenant Home Ownership initiative with, at the time, Representative Frank Chop and Representative Taylor. And so it was a wonderful experience to be part of on that groundbreaking kind of first in the nation legislative policy. Have been there working, I worked at the caucus on several housing policy issues. I covered housing policy for about 5 years at the caucus and also was involved in some of the most recent things, like you mentioned, Bambi, the trailer bill to the Covenant Homeownership bill that made a lot of really important tweaks and changes to that program. So that is my background. All that to say, I am very new to the county. I was recently hired in Executive Zahalai's office starting in January. So I am coming up to speed very quickly on county policy and county everything, county departments, county partnerships. So I am really in a learning phase right now. But what I did want to also mention is that there's a couple of things just for you all to be aware of. Executive Zahalai is very interested in building up a policy team in his own office. So we are actually hiring for a team of 8 to 10 policy leads currently, and one of those will be a housing and homelessness policy lead. So that person, when we have them hired, will also be working very closely with you all. So I would love to continue to stay in touch. There's a couple of other positions that we're still filling out in the office, so we're still getting our bearings around us a little bit, and trying to figure out how we staff up and covering all these really important issues. One of the things that I will mention is that, like I said, I am still learning a lot about our own county initiatives and investments, particularly in homeownership and across the spectrum, really, from everything along the continuum from shelter to homeownership. Still learning a lot about that. But one of the things that the executive did, one of the first actions that he's taken in the first couple months, and since I've been on board, is the announcement of the Breaking the Cycle executive order that he issued last Tuesday. Relevant to this group, there's multiple pieces in that executive order that explore really the intersections for our most vulnerable populations around the criminal legal system, housing, homelessness, and thinking about that. But a secondary part of that executive order was very much focused on something that HDC has been leading in this space for a while, is the question about needing more dedicated revenue to our housing system. So as part of that executive order, there is a hope to work in partnership with lots of folks like you all, HDC, folks all around the spectrum, to look at that dedicated revenue. So the housing levy is a big piece of that, and thinking about how would we move something like that forward? What could those investments look like, and how can we make a difference in getting more dollars into our housing system? Because folks are already doing a lot of great work. We just heard from Kathleen over at CLT about some of the work they're doing. We've heard about some of the work that is happening over at Habitat. We hear about all the great work that's happening. So it's really a matter of how do we scale, and that is a question of investments and needed investments. So that is something that the office will be working on in the coming year. I know in the next couple months, and would love to have participation in partnership from you all. I will say in full transparency, we are still trying to figure out what that process is going to look like, and that work group is going to look like, and how we can get involvement from multiple groups. So we haven't quite nailed that down or figured that out, but we will in the coming weeks, hopefully. We're trying to move very quickly. So those are some of my updates. Like I said, I'm here to be a partner, but I just wanted to mostly come and introduce myself and know that I'm here as a partner in the executive's office. I know housing is a huge issue to the executive, so anything we can do here would be helpful.
Well, we appreciate and give you grace, Marisa. It is 100 days in office here for the new executive. So we very much welcome the partnership and hope to see you in our space frequently. Looks like we have one question. Do you have time for that?
Sure.
Brian?
Well, I actually have a few questions. So sorry to pepper you so quickly, Marisa. I guess a couple of things I would kind of note. One is from a systems level, or from a systems perspective, I can share with you that working, at least from our perspective, working with the county on funding frequently becomes difficult and challenging. Just as far as the process of actually getting the awards, to the process of actually getting the draws, to the process of closing out. I think there's a number of challenges with that, one of which is the fact there simply isn't enough staff doing the work. I think there are other issues with that as well, but I think that's one. So I just kind of wanted to raise that to your attention as something that I think that you all probably need to spend a little bit of time looking at, is making sure that there is sufficient staffing levels to be able to do that. From the King County housing levy side, I think one other thing I'd like to note is I know, a lot of times we like to look at the Seattle housing levy as a great example of something that's been done and that helps fund affordable housing largely. And it does, and it does a great thing, and it is really good. But I would note one of the not great parts about that Seattle housing levy is the fact that it, at the beginning, didn't fund affordable home ownership at all. And then later on, and even only this most recent election funded it at 5%. It was actually just over 5%. I just would note that personally, I can tell you from a Habitat perspective, I don't think 5% is going to be enough. We're strongly in support of it, and we think this is something that's desperately, desperately needed, but we need to treat it as the emergency that it is. And we need to be funding it at the levels that we need to be or at appropriate levels that reflect the urgency there. So, and then at the same time, have the staffing available to actually deploy those dollars. Like it takes us 90 days or more sometimes 4 months plus to be able to get a draw from money we've already been awarded. So like there are some significant problems or challenges, I should say, on just the systems side of things that I would urge you to take a look at as well. So.
Yeah, no, that's really important to note. And I know it's not even just the funding or the distribution of the funds when the funds have been awarded, but it's also even things like the permitting process. And I know I got brought in at the tail end. It's the tail end of the project, my first month, on some of the challenges that the White Center CDA hub project was facing here with the county in those final days of getting it opened and permitted. So definitely on the radar. It just takes a just trying to unpack some of that is kind of the phase that I'm in right now, just trying to figure
Yeah.
out the why behind it and what we can do about it from the county perspective. So yeah, anytime that there's something to flag to say like, please look at this. I mean, that's sort of the phase that I'm in right now is trying to just do that exploration to figure out getting those answers from the department staff, getting the answers about like, there's a staffing. So when we do invest dollars, we have to make sure we're investing appropriate amount of staffing dollars as well to go along with that. But it's all really critical to making these projects be able to move forward and in a timely manner that makes them pencil and makes them work and makes them open quick enough for folks to move in. So thanks for
And
raising that.
and then just one last thing. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier, but I know that there was the workforce housing initiative that the executive had raised up, particularly when he was before he became executive. Since then, I know part of that process has continued. I know part of that being looking at the creation of a revolving construction loan program for affordable home ownership. I was curious to know if you had any updates on that. Last I heard, there was a degree of an expectation that something was supposed to be, or that a report was supposed to be delivered, I think, by the end of the year. And I'd at least heard through the grapevine that deadline was going to completely be not even come close to being hit. So I guess I just want to flag that for you as well.
Yeah, and Ryan, maybe we can follow up after this meeting because
Happy to.
I'm not sure. There's also a credit enhancement program that we're looking at right now that was
Yeah.
also a report was asked for that one. So I think this is probably separate. Like I said, there's been a lot of in the transition, there's just been a lot of coming online, so things may be getting in the shuffle. We're just trying to pick up the pieces, and so anything that, like I said, if you can flag it, then I can track it down. So that would be helpful.
Yep. Sounds great. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, well, we are a little bit over time. Davida, if you have a quick question, that would be, I think, the most we can do there.
Okay, happy to also talk offline to Marissa. Marissa, it's good to see you.
Nice.
When County Executive Zahalai was running, he said he supported reparations, and I was curious who to talk to around any policy thinking from the county on reparations and housing. So I put my email in the chat. I also put in a quote from something I've been chewing on, so that's why I'm asking about the policy part. So would love to talk to someone from the county.
Yes. Right now, you can always feel free to reach out to me. I know that Executive Zahalai is interested in hiring a policy lead that is specifically looking at African American affairs and using that lens to look across all the policy issues. So not just housing, but also early learning, behavioral health. So that we're in the process of trying to write that job description and get it posted to hire for that lead as well. So we are still very much in a building a team team of leads. So it's just taking us a little bit longer to do that than maybe we had all hoped for. But in the meantime, and there's also a couple of policy leads who we have hired. There's also a deputy policy director, Misha Werschkel, and we've hired a refugee and immigrant affairs policy lead, and we've also hired a behavioral and public health policy lead. So as we're bringing folks onto the team, I'm kind of triaging and just trying to do some of this work as well. So I would love to connect with you, Davida.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know it was a short little stint, and thank you for your flexibility and waiting. We had a few minutes delay there. If you don't mind, I'm happy to put your email address in the chat, but I would want your permission to do so.
I was just going to do it myself, but I was just waiting for a break, but you did it ahead of me. You're on top of it, Bambi.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you again. Spring, it's a new start. There's a lot going on at King County, and please, keep connected and reach out at any time.
And likewise for you all too. Feel free to reach out to me as well.
Excellent. All right. right. Well, we are close to the end of our meeting at this point, but last and not least, we do have a little bit more to hear here from our last guest, Jesse Simpson of HDC. Jesse has joined us many times before, and he is joined to talk about the updates on the Seattle Comprehensive Plan. The comp plan has moved to a next phase, and this Monday, April 6th, there was a public hearing that Jesse will tell you more about. We'll also learn what happens next and how we can lean in on the process.
Sure. Hey, good to see you all again. Jess Simpson, I cover the Complete Communities Coalition, my role at the Housing Development Consortium. I'm going to try and get through this as quickly as possible. We are running a bit late on schedule. So for those who haven't heard me talk about this before, comp plans set the overall framework for growth and investments over the next 20 years. Take a long time to update, long-range planning, and they really determine where new housing and new growth can be built. They aren't exactly the same as zoning, but the zoning is meant to fit within it. This is what that actual zoning map looks like. Again, not one-to-one correlation, but all of the zoning rules regarding what can be built and where is meant to follow from the comprehensive plan about dictating where we are at the policy level directing new housing. So since 2022, we've been working, and the city has been working on outreach and engagement on this updated comprehensive plan to allow for broadly more housing throughout the entirety of the city, with a focus on allowing housing outside the pre-existing urban villages and urban centers where we've channeled almost all of the growth since the 1994 original comprehensive plan. So this has been both a way to redistribute some of the burdens and benefits of growth, as well as opening up more capacity for housing generally. After that long, drawn-out mayor's engagement, public engagement, and council engagement, we came with this future land use map designating some additional areas to allow for more multifamily housing and mixed-use development, alongside broadening out what can be built as middle housing in the remaining areas of urban neighborhood residential land. So what's been completed so far is this high-level One Seattle plan laying out kind of general vision, high-level policies, and the future land use map, as well as the new neighborhood residential zoning to define what can be built in the areas that were formerly known as single-family zoning. What remains to be done and what's going on right now is what does the zoning for the remaining areas look like? So centers and corridors is up for consideration, and this is really looking at, well, jumping ahead of myself a little bit. So there's a couple additional phases to actually implement this One Seattle plan, to update the zoning, to reflect the high-level policies, and actually implement the centers. Throughout this future land use map update, they expanded a number of these urban centers. Sophie, you are correct to call out some of the disparities in terms of where these are located. I would say through this One Seattle plan update, the city has made some meaningful steps to address those imbalances. You know, the map was more imbalanced before it, but we definitely still see, and they've expanded out these urban centers around the 130th Street Station for future light rail, Admiral District, West Seattle Junction, as well as around Greenwood and Ballard, as well as creating more of these neighborhood centers dotted throughout the city that are intended to create new opportunities for housing around existing commercial nodes. There also are proposals for along the frequent transit arterials, like 5-story apartment development on low-rise zones. And then in the remaining yellow area, the neighborhood residential areas, This is implementing HB 1110 to allow for fourplexes everywhere, affordable housing density bonus within a quarter-mile frequent transit, and going beyond that for a stacked flat bonus. In terms of what was passed as far as neighborhood residential zones, really took a major step towards opening up the former single-family areas to a broad range of new housing types. So to baseline, having triplexes, fourplexes, and townhomes allowed on all lots. And if you go for, this was responsive to some feedback about the limits of townhomes as far as an accessibility standpoint, created some additional bonuses for stacked flats to try to incentivize this development type and clear the way for more affordable and accessible homeownership options throughout the city. In centers and corridors, it's really looking at what do all these different expanded place types actually mean in terms of the zoning code. So creating the zoning maps for neighborhood centers and expanded urban centers and along transit corridors, and then changing the development standards for what that means in the low-rise 1, 2, 3, all that. This is another way of looking at the changes. So coloring it by yellow and red in centers and corridors, what's proposed to be rezoned. Included one zoom in on Greenwood just as kind of an example of what this looks like as you zoom in from the high level view to the individual centers. You generally see these 55, 65 foot mixed use zones right on the arterials, and then tapering down through mid-rise and low-rise zones off the arterials. That's what kind of the more blobby centers look like. And then along the arterials themselves, where you see these strips, it's just a half-block strip of low-rise zoning. Some identified priorities of the Complete Communities Coalition that we've pulled together in this phase really are focusing on how to use this as an opportunity to set the stage for the low-rise zones to really meet the priorities to do what they're supposed to be doing, to be adding more housing in areas near businesses, transit, and amenities. We need to ensure that they are meaningfully above neighborhood residential. And I've put some thought into how to craft those development standards to produce better outcomes through this courtyard block bonus, looking at eliminating side setbacks and establishing some height bonuses. And then looking further ahead, some of you may have heard about Mayor Katie Wilson's Taller, Denser, Faster initiative that will be kicking off shortly in June and scoping out going beyond the, really this centers and corridors plan is effectively what had been proposed by Mayor Harrell, and updating it to go beyond that to reflect more of her vision for expanded housing opportunities and throughout the entire city. So I would be happy to talk more about all of this in detail at a workshop that we as the Complete Communities Coalition are hosting at the end of the as part of Affordable Housing Week, but wanted to just make sure we've got a little bit of time for questions and final announcements at the end of the end of this meeting. We had the first public hearing this Monday on centers and corridors. Thought it was a great turnout. We had to pull together a rally with Mayor Wilson and Councilmember Rink, as well as Colleen Echo-Hawk and Cecilia Black speaking. It was really powerful to hear from them about their priorities. So yeah, any questions here? Or I can cover more of the development standard changes in detail. So in terms of those development standards, one of the top priorities, again, we're seeing is a need for making sure that the low-rise zones are allowing for the types of housing that we want to see and the outcomes we want. So come up with this courtyard block bonus as a way to basically aggregate the open space that is required on a lot towards the rear, where it's more usable for both growing trees and having, again, usable open space instead of these narrow 5-foot setbacks that really only serve as a function to bring like trash cans to and from the street. 5-foot setback doesn't sound like a ton, but when you look at a fairly narrow urban lot, even just doing that it chews up quite a bit of space, and ends up with homes oriented towards the side lot and minimal space for trees. Aggregating that open space towards the center and courtyard allows you to basically go higher, get more livable urban form, as well as it being a good way to achieve both increased density alongside more housing. And then here's another indication of the transit corridors, kind of the original proposal here from Mayor Harrell effectively is to double down on these tale of two cities. You have the arterial where you've got a bunch of new multifamily housing, half block off, it tapers down quite immediately to single family residential. As we're looking ahead to the denser, taller, faster opportunities, really we'll be looking to expand out those transit corridors to allow for more housing opportunities off the arterials, and especially focused on the high opportunity, low displacement risk areas.
Well, I can see that Jesse put in the link here for in the chat, the Communities Coalition Comp Plan workshop, which will happen during Affordable Housing Week. So it'd be a great way for you to kind of be able to lean into that conversation with a little bit more space for that. Thank you so much, Jesse, for coming and providing us with that update. And we do just have a couple of minutes before the end of the hour. We did overrun a little bit with our guests, and that's okay. But if anyone would like to take a minute or two, you have an announcement that is good for the whole today, feel free to do so.
Want to make sure to, in general, invite everyone to our Affordable Housing Week kickoff event, May 18th, 10 a.m. at Town Hall. And if any of you have, and also we should check out the full calendar there. We'll be adding things throughout the coming weeks. There's already a Homestead Community Land Trust project tour. Yay, Kathleen. If you're interested in that, sign up as soon as you can. Those building tours tend to sell out, pretty limited capacity, and some other, great opportunities. There will be a BHI happy hour on the Tuesday as well.
I think there's pie with Kathleen's tour. There's a pie shop down below.
Wow.
I'm not promising it, but I mean, it could be. You never know. A pie is a good attractor. Well, thank you all for spending this hour and a half. I will be sending out recordings after checking in with all speakers, but really excellent questions today. And as I said at the beginning of the meeting, in May, I'm hoping we're gonna get super interactive. This is an interactive group, but we're really looking for that input as we think about how we move forward and co-create our next policy framework. So have an amazing weekend. Excellent to see all of you, and feel free to reach out any questions or follow-up. Have a great day.
Thank you, Bambi.
Thank you.